everybody, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. I am Griff from GA. Joining me today, Ryan and Anthony, both from ProWrestlingMusings.com. Both you've heard on this podcast a whole lot. And instead of doing a movie reference this week, I just want to say I know a lot of you out there are big soccer fans or football fans. So obviously our prayers are with Christian Eriksen right now after he collapsed on the field earlier today. Seems like he's doing okay. Thank God for that. So I hope he's all right. I hope all his teammates are all right. So instead of doing anything, just wanted to put that out there. But that's the tough part out of the way. Now we just get to talk about AEW Dynamite. This, I think we can all agree, better show than last week, even though some of us were less critical about last week than others. Just depends. But this show I thought was really good. The match quality was excellent, and we will begin, as always, where all good things begin, and that is, of course, at the beginning, with Christian Cage battling Angelico. Sometimes I get those two guys confused. I shouldn't, because Angelico, completely different wrestler, and actually it's surprising to me because I didn't know a lot about him before he came to AEW. I've kind of had to go back and look him up, but this guy has such a unique style that it's, for those of us who don't know much about that kind of Yaveo style, that, you know, offshoot of Lucha Libre, I really enjoy watching him. I think he's a lot of fun. So this match, I had a lot of fun watching this. Christian is just a great worker in the ring. And this, I thought they told a great story throughout. Ryan, when you look at this opening match, it's different than the kind of high spots tag team matches that we often see open Dynamite. But this is the third time, I think, that Christian has been tasked with an opener in this style. And it works every time for me. Did it work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. You throw Christian Cage into basically any situation and he's going to kill it. So I don't mind him being an opener. Typically, I would feel as if the more established guys should go on later on. Like if we're talking the way that New Japan books their shows, for example, you have the lesser guys go on first and then you build up. But that's not necessary when it comes to televised or American televised wrestling. I think Christian Cage definitely keeps on killing it in this role. I'm surprised he's doing as good as he is considering how long he had to take off from wrestling, but I'm happy he's in this role because clearly he's enjoying himself. And obviously if the wrestlers are having a good time doing what they're doing, that's going to show and the fans are going to also have a great time with it. I definitely appreciated this match because we know that Christian Cage is great, but I think this is really the first time that we've seen Angelico prove himself in a singles match. I mean, I've known about him since Lucha Underground. I was a little bit late to the game for Lucha Underground. You know, I only started watching it once it ended, but that's where I really got a sense of what Angelico is all about. And even when he was doing tag team matches back then, he definitely had a lot more personality, and that really used to show in his wrestling style. But I don't think he was really able to show that all as much in AEW. So this was kind of like almost a revelation. A revelation? I don't know what I'm trying to say. It was almost like his coming out moment, like, here's what I can do, here's what I'm made of, and I think it was a great match. The only critique I have, and this is like totally nitpicky, throughout the entire match, the commentators were hyping up the fact that Matt Hardy basically hired him to break Christian Cage's bones, you know? And with only 51 seconds of submissions, I don't think that really shines through as much as it could have. Otherwise, I thought it was a great time. I'm really surprised that Christian Cage had more dives than Angelico. That was pretty cool to think about in hindsight. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed myself. I think if Angelico was to continue down this road, I think he could become an even bigger star in AEW than he already is. I hope that happens because I think he's an awesome wrestler.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I want to make a quick note about the nature of opening matches because, like you said, for a long time in wrestling and still currently in other regions, the conventional wisdom is you kind of build up throughout the show. So you get your lower card guys to open, and then you build up until your crescendo of the main event, which usually is a title or whatever it is that your main event's going to be, featuring your main card guys. I've always disagreed with that. I always feel like the most important slot on the show is the main event, and the second most important slot on the show is the opener, especially on TV. If you're doing live, people are already there. But on TV, people can easily just tune out. And so you want to bring them in immediately with a fun opening match that gets them invested. AEW fully believes in that philosophy. And so I really like it. And so sometimes it is a big high spots match, and sometimes it is more of a cerebral affair like this. I definitely agree with you. Over 9 minutes to have less than a minute, less than 60 seconds of submission time for Angelico, when the story was he's trying to break Christian Cage. It's a little disjointed. This one's kind of tough because the problem is Angelico and Jack Evans as a team have kind of, they're not really high tier. They're not really a high tier team. I think they had a match against the Bucks, which was great because the Bucks are great, but they haven't been presented as a really dangerous tag team, and Angelico certainly as a singles wrestler has not been presented as a singles wrestler. Christian Cage, though, has been presented not only as a really solid singles wrestler, but a potential world championship contender at some point down the road. So it's kind of a tough position to put Angelico in because you can't give him too much offense against Christian. It's not believable. But the story you're trying to tell is that he's having a lot of offense against Christian. So the way that they kind of got around that, if you're looking at the graph, is for essentially Christian to kind of ramp up as the match goes on, but never in a sense where Angelico just completely falls off a cliff in terms of his offense, which I think is a pretty smart way to do it, because you see Christian building and trying to get further into the match, and Angelico is still doing things to try to stifle him, but at the end of the day, Christian, too smart, too skilled. The dives, I'm going to take credit for this. Over in our fantasy faction, I picked Christian as my singles wrestler to have the most dives because I know that he does stuff. He does like the splash and the headbutt and the diving uppercut and all that kind of stuff. So I'll take credit for that. But I thought this was a break from tradition for AEW, but in a very good way. Anthony, when we talk about the story of this match, both Ryan and I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnection, not a severe one, but just a little bit that we can see between the story that they're putting over and the way that this match actually goes. Did that bother you at all?
No, not really. The reason is that Angelico has actually been used in this position by Hardy before. So this is actually something that they've done previously. So obviously Angelico is what we'd consider the hired gun. So, he's been hired previously. He has actually been on Dark and Elevation a little bit doing singles wrestling. So he actually has had a few singles matches now, which is actually really good to see. I actually enjoy his work. I do really like submission-based wrestling, so I'm a big fan of that sort of style. Look, he's been used in this sort of a role before, same with TH2. So for me, it was believable. For me, I see it as Hardy's put out the bounty, which is something that's been discussed, the bounty on Christian, saying, I will pay you money. His first go-to is Angelico, and it's just simple that Angelico bit off more than he could chew. So he's obviously trying to break his bones, but Christian, as you said, was the better wrestler. So yes, he only did get 51 seconds of submission. But if you look at the reversals, he's actually pulled out 13 reversals versus Christian's 12. He's got 2 pin attempts versus 3. His strikes are a little bit down, but his strike downs are actually more than Christian's, and same with his grapples. So you could say that, and the new one that Craig's popped in here, Big Offence, he's actually got 10 over 7. So to be honest, if you look at those other stats, he hanged in there and was actually, doing better. And this goes back to that graph of that, he was actually hanging out with Christian for quite a long time. Yes, he wasn't able to put him in the submission, but I think that might be because Christian, in storyline and in, what we saw in the ring, Christian was able to, counter that. And again, we pushed on the whole Christian's finisher is being very, very well protected at the moment. which is really interesting. So it's going to come down to when he does get his match with Kenny, it'll come down to finisher versus finisher, which is, he currently in AEW, no one's kicked out of his finisher yet. So, everyone's gone down after he's hit it. That's it. That's all it wrote. So, very interesting that they're also building up that sub story about the power of his finisher at the same time as building him up. And I think that's really smart. But yeah, no issues for me because, like I said, Angelico's been used in this position before. This is something that him and the team have done before. So, and that Hardy relationship's already there. So yeah, I think it's just more of a, Hardy's gone to his go-to, but in this case, he hasn't been good enough to fight the style he wanted to, but he did put up a good fight, which is good. And like I agree as well, it was a really good showing for him, and I love his work because I like that. I like the submission-based wrestling style.
Yep. And just a reminder as well, so Big Offense is total offense minus strikes. So the reason why we've included that is because a lot of AEW wrestlers tend to be volume strikers, and so that'll kind of drive up their offense, but you don't necessarily see that reflected in the story of the match. So Big Offense is more of a reflection of the impactful moves, strike downs, grapples, dives, submissions, that kind of thing. So that's why Craig has decided to include that, and I think, again, it just helps us further examine the story of the match. And you can follow along with us on ProWrestlingMusings.com. You can see all this stuff. One quick question I want to ask both of you guys. We'll start with Anthony first. I've heard some critique about the way that this story has progressed because Christian seemed to be working through Team Taz, and then he's now switched over to a program with Matt Hardy in the Hardy Family Office. To me, that's worked really well because I think Christian and Hardy work well, and I think Hangman Page and Team Taz and that whole story is working really well for me, and we'll talk about that when we discuss the main event. But I can see where the critique would be that it was a bit too abrupt. Where do you come down on that?
Yeah, look, it was a bit too abrupt, but I think that leads to the chaos that is what AEW is. When we look at the story is that, this all started because of the Battle Royal. And that was a very clear thing and clear motivator. So, they were fighting. Team Taz is obviously now busy with the Hangman stuff and Dark Order stuff. So, and now they're obviously, which we'll discuss later. So I think I'll leave the rest of that discussion to later. But look, I think you are a little bit right that yes, it was a bit abrupt, but they made storyline sense of it, why it's happening. Which is all that we can really ask for. As long as it makes sense and as long as there's a reason, I'm pretty happy with it. And for this, there is a clear start of the feud. Why there is, and now they're reaching back into the history. Funny thing is that these two both obviously this is leading up to a Hardy versus Christian match, which we'll probably see on one of the big four shows that we'll talk about later, but. Those two actually haven't really wrestled one-on-one. I think they've only had like 2 one-on-one matches against each other, and none of them have lasted more than 9 minutes. So,
wow.
it is a very surprising stat when you consider the history between them two.
Right.
But all the history is lined up with tag team wrestling, not singles. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what sort of a singles match they actually have, because they've only had like. That none of their matches, I think there was only 2 of them, I think it was, but it was under 5 easily, considering they're 20-year vets by now. They've only had those 2 matches, and neither of them went for over 10 minutes. Shows that there's a lot there to be explored, and a storyline involving their history without saying their history too much, because obviously there's certain parts of their history they really can't say, but they can allude to, which AEW does do. I think it's going to be a very interesting story going forward, and interesting to see what they do with it.
Yeah, and I think they've both proven that they can work. Matt Hardy has had really good matches against Darby Allin. I think he had a great showing in the Casino Battle Royal. And Christian, he has yet to have even an average match, in my opinion, in AEW. I think all of his matches have been above average or better. So both of these guys can still go. So I'm actually excited to see them get more time to really explore this story in a focused one-on-one contest. Ryan, where do you stand on Christian shifting his focus from Team Taz here to the Hardy family office?
I think the main reason this didn't bother me like it bothers some other people is the fact that I was looking at this storyline, or I was looking at it as multiple storylines. Christian Cage versus Team Taz, and then Adam Page versus Team Taz, for example. I didn't see them as two separate storylines. I just saw it as one overarching storyline about Team Taz and how they're slowly gonna fall apart, basically. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just think Christian Cage running through there, facing Powerhouse Hobbs, for example. I thought that was just a way for them to show Team Taz's relative ineffectiveness, I guess. So, in the grand scheme of things, I guess it really depends on how you view it. If you viewed those instances as two separate storylines, then yeah, of course, Christian Cage moving on so quickly is going to be abrupt, because there could have been a lot more story if they were just going to focus on Christian Cage and Team Taz. But clearly what AEW is going for is something more expansive, pertaining to Team Taz, which I'm definitely looking forward to, because I'm pretty much a fan of all of the guys in Team Taz. And I think whether as a team or as single stars or tag team stars, I think they're all very much capable of being big deals in AEW, kind of like they are right now. Mm-hmm. Maybe the fact that they're together is holding them back. I don't know yet. I think they've done a pretty great job so far. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a good example of blending stories the way that AEW likes to do, and that I think is really effective the way that AEW does it. And speaking of that, the biggest example of blending storylines on this match was of course Death Triangle and Eddie Kingston versus the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler. This, I thought, ended up being a great match. I love the way that they dealt with the Kingston Pac storyline, and the fact that Penta's kind of caught in the middle, but that wasn't the central focus of the match. That was the important part to me, was that the central focus of this match needed to be these three guys that have a common enemy in the Elite and doing what they do, and that's exactly what it was. And the wrinkle to it this time is that Pac and Kingston have this history. Well, all three of them have this history. So I thought AEW dealt with that really, really well. I really enjoyed this match. The Young Bucks are great. They're always great. My only issue is very early on when Brandon Cutler first got tagged in. AEW usually is really good about having kind of a flow the way that stories go. This one kind of messed with me a little bit, because even though Brandon Cutler was certainly not pushed as anywhere near the level of Penta or Pac or Kingston, Brandon Cutler, not too recently, was treated as a serious wrestler. You know, he had an entrance and he had competitive matches and all this kind of stuff. And I've seen that. I saw him do that. And so now in the beginning of this match, he was treated as basically like as Michael Nakazawa, who is always treated as a comedy guy. So you want to treat him like that, fine. But Brandon Cutler was treated like that this time. And it's kind of like, you know, a few months ago, I saw him wrestle seriously. I know he can. Eventually, he started to do more stuff in the match, and so that critique kind of went away for me. And we got to watch just these incredible athletes just do what they do, and this match was just a lot of fun for me. Ryan, I think AEW has... I mean, I would go so far as to say they've mastered the six-man tag match. Every single one that they've done is entertaining and tells a story. That's in my opinion. What did you think about this one here?
If All Japan Pro Wrestling didn't exist, then I would 100% agree with you.
That's fair.
The modern day six-man tag team match they've mastered, I'll say.
Okay, all right. I'm good with that.
Yeah, because we can't discount the four pillars. We can't discount Masa Fuchi, you know, but that's besides the point. This match was interesting to me. It's a vast improvement from last week's Pac and Penta versus Young Bucks match. Not that I thought that match was all that bad. I just didn't think it kicked into high gear. This one definitely did, and it kicked into high gear pretty fast. Looking at the graph of the 3-minute intervals total offense, I'm really surprised to see just how fast things escalated towards the back end. I kind of figured it was just going insanely fast the entire time, but clearly you have the Death Triangle and Eddie Kingston boosting up their offense like crazy towards the end. And that, I think that was probably my favorite part, because that's where you really saw all three of them working as a cohesive unit and understanding just how effective they can be against the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler. Not that they necessarily had any big disagreements or anything at the beginning of the match. There was never any moments where it was like, can they coexist or anything like that. I think this was a great match length. I think 15 minutes is the perfect spot fest match length, I would say, because you can put everything in there you want, but it doesn't drag or anything. So overall, I'm happy about that. I'm not really surprised that the Young Bucks had more strikes. I'm definitely not surprised that the Death Triangle had more dives. You know, one of my first podcasts I did for this website, we talked about how the Young Bucks have changed as bad guys, and the general sentiment I got was that the Young Bucks, while they don't necessarily change up their style, they definitely cut back on the quantity of dives, for example, and this match definitely shows that. Weird thing, I kind of, when I was watching this match, it almost brought me back to that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla match. It was El Generico and Paul London versus the Young Bucks versus Brandon Cutler and his brother Dustin Cutler. And just that energy, all the two teams brought here reminded me of the energy the three teams brought back then. So that kind of, that I enjoyed that aspect of it, having a little bit of nostalgia, even though like they're a good half of the competitors in this match were not involved in that match back in like 2010, I think it was. Overall, I had a good time watching this match, I guess.
Yep, I'd agree with that. I want to say again how much I appreciate, because you mentioned it, the way that they dealt with the coexist storyline, you know, because I think for those times, there are certain times where the violent breakup in the middle of a match is really effective, but for every, you know, Shawn Michaels turning on John Cena, there is a Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. You know, you don't need to do that every time. And this was a lot more subtle, which I really appreciated. They had one moment where I think it was Pac who blind tagged himself in, and Kingston got annoyed about it, because I think that came right after Pac didn't tag in Kingston. He went and tagged in Penta when they were controlling Brandon Cutler. But the story develops throughout the match, and by the end, Kingston and Pac were doing stereo dives, and they were all working together, like you said. So this ends up being, I think, a really entertaining match, because that story unfolds throughout the match, and we get a beginning, middle, and end within the match itself of that particular story, and then we get the overarching story of the match, which, of course, ends with Brandon Cutler eating the pin. Of course he did. We all knew that if there was someone in this match that was going to eat the pin, it would be Brandon Cutler. And then the story continues afterwards with an immediate beatdown, and away we go with this whole feud. So, Anthony, the way that they told these stories really worked for me, and the way that this match was structured, the Young Bucks continuing to show that they've changed the way that they present themselves, and they've changed their characters have now influenced the way that they wrestle. We mention it every time that it's, I think, such a smart way to go about showing that their characters have really changed. So all this being said, with the 13-minute match length that Ryan alluded to, probably the perfect length for a match of this style, was this effective to you in terms of furthering the Elite and Death Triangle, Frankie Kazarian, a whole story that we're seeing here?
Yeah, look, when we break it down, this is a can they coexist story. And that was what they built. And the thing is that it's actually a good can they exist story, because at the end, instead of it being no, which we get so many other times, no, they can't coexist. They actually can, because and they put this over on commentary. At the end of the day, it's all about and this is something that AEW does a lot. At the end of the day, you want the win because the wins matter. And putting aside your own personal squabbles to beat up the other guys who you hate more, that's definitely the story here. And yeah, they did it well. There was enough subtlety of, enough subtlety, but they never overstayed that welcome. So it was a really good mix. But it definitely was a can they coexist story, but one that was actually done well. So, I like that. In terms of the match was fine. My boy Eddie did a dive, so that was quite exciting. I didn't think I was going to see him do a dive, but he did one, and I was very excited to see that. The pin attempts, 5 pin attempts versus 1, just shows, they were in, obviously, the driver's seat quite a lot. I am really enjoying when Pac puts on the brutalizer and someone starts trying to kick him and he doesn't let go. I'm finding that, because this is, I think, the second time he's done that. He did that during the triple threat as well. And yeah, I'm really liking that side, because that's something that, you'd believe his character would do. His character wouldn't let go for something, so it makes sense. So, the match was perfectly fine. I've got no major issues with it. In terms of the Brendan stuff, this is his first match back from injury, so I can forgive him not being, he's had nothing. He's had no matches or that. So, I could attribute that early stuff to potentially ring rust. He hasn't wrestled for quite a while. He has just returned from having his nose broken by his orbital broken. So, him being a bit not, being a bit rusty or being a bit, laggy at the start kind of makes sense in that term as well. So, okay. For me, I've got no issues with it. It was a good match, which, considering the people who are in there, you can definitely expect that sort of a good match. And, the Bucks and Brendan all playing up their, heel characters and, doing a bit of heel stuff, that's what we really expect. So, yeah, look, nothing really major to take home in regards to this one. It was a good match, and that's what we expect from this sort of a talent that's hit in there.
Anthony, while I got you here, I just want to ask you a quick question before we move on, because it was around this point in the show where we got one of your favorite factions, of course, the Wingmen, issuing a challenge to Orange Cassidy. Now, you are a frequent watcher of Dark and Elevation, and you have spoken very highly about this group, so I just want to get your opinion on this. Is this something that you want to see here? I think we're going to see Cesar Bononi against Orange Cassidy next week. So are you excited for this match?
I'm always excited when the Wingmen are in there. Look, I'd like them to get some more wins. To be honest, like, they are very much I love their look. I love their presentation. I love what they're doing. Okay. I'm enjoying them as characters, but they are a jobber faction effectively. And they are losing a lot more than that they're winning, which you would expect. But, for them to be sort of doing these call-outs and that, I'd be liking to see them do a little bit more winning, I think, rather than, losing all the time. So hopefully we get to see them do a few wins, make them a bit more believable. Obviously they're losing. I'd never expect Cesar to beat, Cassidy, but Cesar has been doing a lot of good work. If you look at his past matches he's had, he's always put on a really good performance. Getting in there, getting hit. He's been doing really good. He did a really great job on Elevation and that. So, yeah, look, I'm excited to see what they do. They're really getting some extra time, which shows that, they've been putting in the work to get their characters over, and they have quite a cult following, especially on the live chat, like during Elevation and that. Whenever they show up, everyone's like, "Yeah, Wingman, let's go!" And you see it on their tweets and everything. Everyone loves these guys. So I think maybe pushing them up a little bit would probably pay off, because I think they've got a solid following now. So I think let's see what happens here. I fully expect Cassidy to win. Like I said, it gives the best friends something to do, because there's 4 of them, and three of the best friends. So you could have them do something, especially while Death Triangle are busy doing elite stuff, because if you remember, they were very much in line to sort of do a feud. So it just gives them something to do until Death Triangle are ready for their eventual feud to be able to lift back up, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think just by virtue of his size, Cesar Bononi is always, he's an imposing opponent, and it always puts guys over when they beat him, just because of what he looks like and how he moves and how strong he is. So I can always appreciate that. AEW is not the land of the giants the way that we've seen from wrestling promotions in the past, and so I think that works out really well for a giant like Cesar Bononi, who's booked the way he is, that it still is impactful even if he kind of is a jobber. So I like that dynamic of it. I want to get to the TNT title match now. I want to talk about Miro and Evil Uno, and I want to talk about this match because I think it's the beginning of what is going to end up being a development for Miro's character as TNT champion. This was a complete back to the basics match. This was 9.5 minutes. This was heel versus babyface. Heel gets the heat, babyface comeback. Heel wins in the end. Very heelish thing by making him tap out right in front of the Dark Order, who of course are babyfaces, so they can't do anything about it. This to me was exactly what you want from a heel champion, and you want to put over a plucky babyface contender. So this worked for me on every level that way. And what I really like is, AEW, they obviously do their basics of heel and babyface storytelling really well, but they, at this point in the game, they don't actually do it very often. AEW likes to kind of push the boundaries when it comes to the way that they're going to tell stories, and they have baby faces that are dominant, like Cody. They have heels that sometimes fall behind in matches, and the heel ends up having to make a comeback, and so there's AEW flips a lot of these tropes on their heads, and so that's why Miro, even though he's not actually doing anything sensational, he's doing things that have been done since the 50s when it comes to heels and baby faces, but because AEW has such a variety, they can put over Miro in this way, because there aren't a lot of guys that wrestle like this. So I think this is the beginning of, eventually challengers are going to start getting the better of Miro, and we're going to see that match offense percentage, which is consistently up near 60%, that's going to start going down, and then eventually someone's going to get the better of Miro for the majority of a match. Miro's going to have under 50% of his of the match offense, which I don't think has happened yet for a Miro match. And I think just because, physically they're telling this story, that is going to be a lot more impactful than if the commentators are just screaming at us, no one gets the better of Miro like this, because we can actually see it play out in front of us on our screens. So, Ryan, this match worked for me on that level. It was simple, it was straightforward, and it put Miro over as an absolute monster, which is what we wanted to see. How did this TNT title defense work for you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought it was a pretty great match. Like you said, nothing way too complicated. Clearly, they went back to the glory days of wrestling in the 50s. I hate the fact that I just called them the glory days, but you get what I'm trying to say. The golden age, I should say. What I find so interesting is the fact that Miro was able to handle someone like Evil Uno, who's a bigger dude. I don't know how much he weighs, but he definitely isn't gonna go down easily. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It definitely takes a lot more, I guess, big offense, as Craig says, to take Evil Uno down than I thought it would. 15 instances of big offense from Miro to Evil Uno, who gave 5 And that could just be a matter of Miro having more offense, or it could just be a matter of Evil Uno not wanting to go down and trying to show his resilience. And it could be both. I don't know. I thought out of anyone in the Dark Order to be facing Miro, I was kind of surprised it was going to be Evil Uno. Not because I don't think he's capable. I mean, at this point, he's as close to a leader of the Dark Order as they're gonna get, I would say. Besides like negative one, obviously he's the top guy. But yeah, I think Evil Uno is definitely an underrated wrestler compared to some of the other guys in that faction. Colt Cabana has been known to put on excellent matches. Same with John Silver. If you've seen anything he's done for Beyond Wrestling, you know that he was great even before coming to AEW. Evil Uno, to me, he's been best known in terms of match quality for his team with Stu Grayson, right?
Right.
Back in the days of PWG, the Canadian independent scene, they've been a package deal, and I haven't seen way too much of Evil Uno as a solo wrestler. So I think this was a good opportunity for him to show what he's capable of. And the end, that was pretty awesome. I hate the fact that I think it was so awesome considering the fact that Evil Uno was just like mercilessly defeated in front of this 8-year-old kid who probably views this guy as one of his best friends. But the fact that Brody Jr. looked like he was gonna try and fight Miro, that made the match for me, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Overall, the trajectory of Dark Order has been so fascinating because they started off as such lackluster characters, and the storyline just wasn't working. But then Brody Lee comes in, they kind of, even though they weren't faces at that point, they definitely had more good guy tendencies. And then, obviously, with Brody Lee dying, that fully forced them into, not forced them, they fully became the good guys, and they've been killing it since. So any success any of them obtain from here on out, I'll be happy for. And even though Evil Uno lost, the fact that he was put in this position in the first place is kind of a win as a booster for Dark Order. So I guess my closing argument, or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that any situation the Dark Order get into that helps them elevate their status is going to be a good thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one, and they tend to be, I think, in really entertaining matches. And again, we'll talk about one of those entertaining matches coming up, of course, in the main event that featured a member of the Dark Order. Anthony, again, this match worked for me on a lot of levels because Miro really is just an old school heel. He plays it in a new way. You know, he's not the same as a lot of heels that we would associate with kind of the old school. Like if you think Bruiser Brody or Stan Hansen or guys like that, he doesn't play it that way. But he does have, in my opinion, those same kinds of tendencies. He comes off the same way. And so his matches look like these kind of old school matches, which does really work for me. But if you were in AEW right now and you're looking at how to book Miro going forward, would you want to get away from doing matches like this potentially? Or are you fine with Miro fighting this kind of style for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think Miro is doing a great job at the moment, so keep it going. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend going to watch his God of Thunder promo that he posted on his Twitter. He cut a promo on Evil Uno, and just as he sort of changed his tone, Thunder struck. It was amazing. It was so good. Like, just go watch it. It's so good. And he's been doing these every week. Like every time he does a TT challenge, he puts out a video a celebration video, basically talking about his opponent, and his opponents have also been doing one, like Evil Uno did one back to him. It was really good. So yeah, look, definitely check those out because they're really good. For me, I wasn't a big fan of how this match happened with Dark Order. Obviously, the reason for this was that Evil Uno was granted this opportunity because Johnny Hungy gave it to him because Tony Khan gave it to him as a birthday gift. So that leads just so many issues with, okay, why doesn't other people who have birthdays get these title shots, I know, it just, especially when he's not medically cleared, and Evil Uno has only had one singles match, and that was after he was actually given the title shot on it was either Elevation or Dark. He had his match, but yeah, look, I wasn't too keen with how it happened. Obviously the TNT title and Dark Order are very linked, so we're going to see this, but I don't want to see all the Dark Order sort of, I guess, get written out before they have their big comeback. Like, I'd like them to sort of leave some in the tank. I'm worried that they're gonna overdo it a little bit, but I have enough faith in AEW that I don't think that they're going to. So it's just a very fine balance. You don't want to see them keep going back to the well with the Dark Order, Brody, and TNT stuff, because they have done it a few times now. So, maybe give Dark Order a bit of space between them and the TNT title for a little bit. Miro's doing great stuff. Like I said, he's just released a new shirt that says Final Boss on it, and he has got such Final Boss vibes at the moment. His look, his demeanor, his everything that everyone wanted him to be in WWE and more. So this is his big chance to show what he can do, and I think he's doing it. I think just keep giving him more great matches where he can have a good match and end up destroying someone in the most heelish way. I am a bit surprised that they're not doing it, keeping it at the and this is something I think I brought up on this podcast, that I said that after Darby lost it, I was be interested to see if they kept the TNT title as the main event. It kind of seems to me, it feels like it's a bit of a demotion, to be honest. Not having it, like, I know he's not having the same matches that Darby was, but you've built this title up over the past few weeks as the main event of Dynamite every week, and then all of a sudden it drops down to middle of Dynamite or early Dynamite. Yes, even though they're good matches in that, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it feels like it's emotion, but it's just it's an interesting thing to, I guess, think about whether or not it does feel like a little bit of a demotion or not for the title. But yeah, look, Miro's doing great work. I see Miro having a nice, good long run with it. I've seen a few people fantasy book him versus Sammy Guevara at All Out even. So, who's going to take it off of him at the moment? At the moment, there's no one at the moment I can think of that, I want to see him lose it to, because it's too early, but he's doing such a great job with it, I think, to be honest. I'm keen to see him have it for a while and just keep doing these sort of a match.
Sammy Guevara is an interesting name to throw in there, I think, because obviously he is going to be dealing with the current storyline that he and the Inner Circle are involved in, at least for the foreseeable future. And speaking of which, we did have, of course, segment involving the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle on this one. And obviously I'm going to ask your two thoughts on this particular segment. For me, it's I'm never going to not want things like this, because all 10 guys can cut a promo between those two teams, and just think about how rare that is. You can get a 5-on-5 faction battle where all 10 guys can cut a promo, 11 if you count Tully Blanchard. And so for me, that's always going to be a draw whenever they do these kinds of segments. But the faction promo and then interruption followed by a kind of big moment, whether it's a fight or the bubbly bath, or in this case, they destroy the Pinnacle's limo. It's just, they've done it. They've done it a lot. And so that kind of story beat, I'm not getting anymore, even though the limo destruction I thought was pretty cool. The introduction of the forklift to drive it through the limo door and then lift it up, I thought that was pretty cool. But the segment itself didn't really do much for me on a storyline point of view, just great promos by everyone involved, as we've come to expect. So Ryan, this has, I think, very, very varying levels of return for whoever's watching. It just depends on how invested you are, and some people, I think, have just completely turned off of this, and they've totally disconnected from the story. And I think some people do really like this, and I think there's a lot of people that feel like this is overtures to kind of old school faction wars and things like that, where this is kind of the bread and butter, where you have things like this. For me, what's just more interesting is the one-on-one battles that are happening now. And so Hager and Wardlow in an MMA rules match, I'm really looking forward to that. I can't wait to see what they can do. We talked about that last week on the podcast, and potentially, what that might look like. So for you, where does this story stand? Are they still able to connect with you?
Not really. I wasn't really connected with the storyline to begin with. If we're going to be honest, I think what's kept me anticipating things is the fact that they keep on doing novel things. Like, one of the first big moments in this feud was the Blood and Guts match, which obviously, regardless of whether or not you're in tune with a feud or enjoying it, that's going to be a huge moment for them and for AEW. Then the fact that they're doing the MMA match with Wardlow and Hager, that's another one of those novelty moments that you kind of have to watch to see what the hell is going to go down, regardless of whether or not you're actually into the feud or not. And that's kind of where I am at this point. I'm definitely excited for FTR versus Proud and Powerful, just because I know that that's going to be a banger of a match, regardless of whether storyline-wise or not, it is going to be good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that episode of Dynamite, their segment didn't really do anything for me. It's one thing to be... I mean, they're decent promos. I wouldn't go all out and say that they're all great promos, especially Wardlow. His promo was kind of disappointing, honestly. It did what it had to do, but it was nothing special. And I wouldn't expect a guy like Wardlow to be a great promo, considering that he really hasn't done that all that much in AEW. He's pretty much been the silent type, the dude who'll kick ass when the time comes, but be quiet and lurk in the shadows, I guess. So I suppose I wasn't expecting much from his promo, but it just didn't do anything for me to actually hype up their match. And I'm only running on the novelty factor. But when it comes to the second half of the segment, the vehicular destruction, that just doesn't do anything for me either, because AEW has done this way too much in such a short time period, It's not the attitude era anymore. You can't just do that and expect everything to be dandy, I guess I'm not really... I'm not hyped up by this feud overall. Everything that's drawing me to this feud is stuff that you wouldn't expect in wrestling, I guess, coming to fruition. That's what's really getting to me. So, yeah, I'll leave off at that.
So, Anthony, the question then is, when it comes to a faction feud like this, is it an issue if what you're more excited to see is the individual matchups rather than the full-on faction battle, which we've already seen happen? Is that an actual problem when it comes to connecting with this story and the characters involved?
Yeah, look, they've done it backwards, and I've been critical from this. As you know, I've been a bit critical towards this whole thing that it's been going backwards since Blood and Guts. Blood and Guts should have been the end of this. They should have built up to Blood and Guts. I understand, they wanted to get it done and everything, but, it has really just hit this storyline. They've gone from Blood and Guts, this match where they're putting over that, it's life and death, their lives are at risk. Then they've gone to this Stampede match, and, the Pinnacle in their promo themselves said, that wasn't really a match, that wasn't our sort of a match. Okay, well, they said, oh yeah, it's going to be serious. There was still a lot of comedy spots in there, stuff that was, very, very cheesy. It wasn't as serious as what they were sort of trying to make it. And now we're breaking up into the single feuds, which, all well and good. But for me, it's gone completely backwards. It should have gone up from the single feuds up to those faction warfares. That's my opinion, but, that's just how I feel. It's just a bit backwards. In terms of the damage in that. So one thing I will say is that the Pinnacle, the issue I have is that the Pinnacle's promos aren't getting time to sort of hit that they're good promos. They're not getting the time where you look at what the Inner Circle are doing whenever they do their promos. There's a nice long pause so you can take in their promo, or, there's even a week in between where, you can get a bit of a rest and you can take in their promos and be like, hey, that was actually a really good promo. I find that you're not really getting that with the Pinnacle. And when we really look at it, is the Pinnacle stronger or weaker at this point after, where they're standing at the moment? Okay, so for me, I don't think that they came in very strong. They came in, looking $1 million, and I think that they have been brought down a fair bit after everything that's sort of happened to them. I don't think it's really helped them as a faction. So yeah, look, I'm ready for this to be over. I'm ready for this to be done. I want them all to move on to other things. If the Pinnacle are going to stay as a faction after all this, let them be a dominating faction, but in an Inner Circle, I think, for me, has ran its course. But yeah, look, the issue I have as well with the damaging part is that, these guys are meant to be our baby faces. Obviously, they're destroying heels property, but they're still, you got baby faces that are, I don't know, it just doesn't really, it's really hard to explain because, it was a really good, I enjoyed the destruction and everything because, it's cool, but I feel that it should be the other way around. It should be the Pinnacle that are doing this stuff, the Pinnacle that are, going out and hunting them all, the Pinnacle that are destroying stuff, the Pinnacle that are, getting the one up on them. That's what we should be doing. I don't know what they're trying to achieve here, but yeah, for me, it's let's get the singles matches done. Let's get this over and done with. Let's move on. I am ready for this to be done.
I think the philosophy as far as MJF goes, and that extends to the entire Pinnacle, MJF comes from the Ric Flair, Vince McMahon school of heels, which is that you should always be embarrassed or something should always happen to you. And not even, obviously, as far as big storylines are concerned, that moment of showing face or however you want to term it, that happens in the end. But a lot of heels, they look unstoppable until that moment. And MJF comes from a school where he believes that you should show face all the time. You should be embarrassed all the time as a heel, and you get those little moments of comeuppance. And so then, of course, when you do that, it's a question of, are you doing it too often? Are you making him look too weak? And that's always going to be a balance. The stories involving Flair and McMahon, who I believe are the two most famous when it comes to that mentality of being a heel. Some of those storylines really worked, but some of them didn't. It just depends on how often you do it, and it depends on who you're working with, and there's all kinds of different factors. So whether this works for you or not, some of MJF's storylines really have worked for me in that regard. So this seems to be more of that, just on a bigger scale. 5 men versus just one. I think when it comes to whether or not the Pinnacle look weaker or stronger than they did when they started. As a group, in terms of kayfabe, I think they look weaker just in the sense of right after they started, the day after the Pinnacle formed, if MJF had said that day, I'm going to challenge Kenny Omega for the World Championship, I would have believed it, and he would have been a viable World Championship challenger. If he were to do that now, I wouldn't believe it so much. He's kind of pulled himself away from that credible world champion place that he was at when the Pinnacle formed. However, when it comes to what's still going to draw me in, the reality is if they were to tell me we're doing, Pinnacle versus Inner Circle in like a Survivor Series type match, just 5-on-5 elimination, that I wouldn't be excited for. But you're telling me we're getting Wardlow and Hager in an MMA rules match? Yeah, I'm excited for that. If we get MJF versus Guevara or MJF versus Jericho, yeah, I'm excited for that. And obviously FTR versus Proud and Powerful, yeah, I'm excited for that as well. So in that particular sense, this has actually helped me get more hyped for that because now I really want to see those matches. So maybe AEW is thinking, we'll take our licks in the short term because at the end of the day, if we do MJF versus Jericho at All Out, that's the match that people have wanted to see from the beginning. So from the moment MJF turned on the Inner Circle, that was the match that people wanted to see. And so if that's their mentality, then that's fine because ultimately even the bad segments, and bad is relative, even the bad segments aren't ones that make me want to turn the channel off. They're just ones that I'm kind of like, yeah, could I do without this? Yeah, probably. But, if the match in the end is going to justify it, then that's fine with me. Not every feud has to be must-watch TV the entire time. Or not every feud can be, I would say that. So that's why this doesn't bother me so much. But if you are someone who's disconnected from the story in that way, I can definitely understand that as well. They haven't done a whole lot to get you really invested in what you're seeing beyond the work that had been done in the early going. So that's definitely fair. Let's talk about the women's match on the show here. We had several segments. We had a Jade Cargill segment. We had a Britt Baker promo. Obviously, Britt Baker is fantastic, as we know. But the match we got to see was, I thought, a really good one. And the last match we talked about was, of course, Miro's TNT title defense. And we talked about how that's a very old school match, heel versus babyface. Well, this match here, Layla Hirsch against Nyla Rose, assuming that Nyla Rose is the heel, which I'm fairly certain she is, this was that concept that we talked about with Miro, just flipped, like I was saying before. So Layla Hirsch, she gets the heat in terms of she is white hot out of the gate, and then Nyla Rose climbs back into the match, and it's very much it's a concept that I really like because to me it's very realistic. The babyface would want to start off hot, and that's what everyone wants to see, and then you see the heel gradually using more heel tactics, in Nyla Rose's case just using her overwhelming strength and power to get the advantage, and ultimately Nyla Rose does win this. And one other wrinkle that I really liked about it, I love when a match finish revolves around one particular thing, like an object or a move or something like that. So famously, Kenny Omega and Hangman Page did this in their Eliminator Tournament final, where they were battling over the One-Winged Angel, and they had the hand fight where Kenny Omega was trying to lock it in and everything. I really, really like that. I think it's a great storytelling piece, and in that match, it worked well. And in this match, the whole story by the end was Nyla Rose up on the turnbuckle. Layla Hirsch is trying to bring her down, and they're doing all the, they're fighting over it, and ultimately it does lead directly to the finish when Nyla Rose hits the Avalanche Beast Bomb, which is nasty, by the way. That finish really worked for me. I really like this match. This combined with Britt Baker's promo makes me more excited to see Britt versus Nyla Rose whenever we do end up doing that, which is exactly what was the aim with this. So, Ryan, are you more excited to see Britt Baker's first championship defense against Nyla Rose this week than you were 7 days ago?
It's... Oh, man, I hate to say this, but I'm a little bit less excited. Not because the promo work hasn't been great. I think that has been excellent, I'm not sure that Britt Baker is going to be able to have as good of a match as Layla Hirsch can have against Nyla Rose. What I've been noticing is that whenever Nyla Rose, her best matches are the ones where she's fighting someone of her own size and striking capabilities, or someone who is a lot smaller and strikes more often. So this match, her match against Riho, her few matches against Riho, they have been so excellent because that dynamic. Well. Oh, yes, of course. Totally forgot about that. But yeah, Nyla Rose is at her best when she's the monster heel and she's fighting the scrappy babyface who just won't die and is gonna dish out as much punishment as they can, you know? And when I think about what Britt Baker and Nyla Rose could do, I'm not sure that I know that dynamic won't work here, because even though we've seen Britt Baker dish out a lot of punishment and have a lot of punishment dished out on her, I'm just not sure that who knows, maybe their chemistry will be great, but this match makes me think that, like, maybe not, because we've been seeing this pattern so often, you know? This match was the match of the night, I would say. I think they're both excellent wrestlers. Layla Hirsch is unbelievable. In case anybody watching or listening to this at home didn't know, Layla Hirsch is a boss, you know? Definitely a lot more strikes. Dished out a lot more strikes than Nyla Rose. Dished out one extra strike down compared to Nyla Rose. Overall, Layla Hirsch brought it. Nyla Rose, she seemingly did a little bit less than Layla Hirsch, but the stuff she did do counted like crazy. I think this was an excellent match overall. I'm scared for Britt Baker, though, because I'm not sure that this match is going to do, or their future match is going to do her any favors and show her as a capable champion. Because if I'm being totally honest, her most recent match, Britt Baker's most recent match against Hikaru Shida, definitely wasn't the greatest ever, and I think a second lackluster match could potentially make fans think, maybe she isn't as great as we thought she was. She has everything else, but the wrestling side of things just a notch down compared to some of her contemporaries in the company. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm a little bit worried.
I think you're being a little unfair to Britt's match with Shida. I mean, I thought it was actually a really good match. Now, how much of that has to do with Shida and how much of it has to do with Baker, that obviously can be debated forever. But you do make a fair point that Nyla Rose tends to work best against much smaller opponents, usually baby faces. The interesting thing about Baker, though, she actually has a little bit more of those qualities than we might actually give her credit for. She throws more strikes actually than Layla Hirsch does in terms of on average. So you know, she has that going for her. She obviously spends a lot of time working the submission game, same as Layla Hirsch does. Both of them tend to get a lot of reversals in their matches, meaning that their matches tend to move pretty quickly. They kind of will shift between, you know, who's got the momentum, and we could see it in this match against Rose with Layla Hirsch. What's interesting is this particular story of the babyface starting off hot and getting the heat early on, and Nyla Rose having to climb back in. That's actually a story that Rose tends to tell a lot. You know, her average match offense that we have over on ProWrestlingMusings.com, she averages about 38% of the offense in her matches. So this is a story that she likes to tell, with her having to claw back in, be it by heelish means or just by being too strong and powerful. So for Britt Baker, someone who averages 61% of the match offense, so Britt Baker likes to be ahead and work as a traditional heel, that's how I actually think this match will be done, because Nyla Rose can still be the heel and fight her exact game, and Britt Baker can still be a heel and fight her exact match the way that we're used to seeing it. That's why this match is really intriguing to me, that the styles still work together, even if on the surface the characters don't. But I definitely see what you're saying. This would be a break from what we've seen Nyla traditionally excel with in terms of the characters that she has to work against, which for me actually just intrigues me, because I'm interested to see what they do. Anthony, though, you have talked a lot in the past about Britt Baker and what she may or may not be able to do for the women's division, and how things need to progress now that Baker is so over and is the champion. So she is the top draw in the company now. So with this being the first feud, and I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you on the podcast since this whole thing started, what do you think here? Is this actually something that you are excited to see?
Yeah, before I do that, I'll just also shout out to Layla, because she's just great. It's really good to see her in the top 5. She definitely deserves it. She's been on actually a winning streak on Elevation and Dark, so it was really good to see her get that Dynamite show, and she, even though she lost, she looked like a beast. Ready for her to go and do something else, maybe get a bit of a faction or something running. A lot of people wanted to join Team Taz, and I think that should be a really good fit with her, especially with her suplex ability. So, her German suplex ability. So, look, big things in her future, definitely. In terms of this one, I'm not a huge fan of the story, but it makes sense. So it makes sense in a few ways. Number one, Nyla defeated Britt Baker in the tournament, so she has a victory over her, which they mentioned on commentary. So, for me, they mentioned it on commentary. That makes sense. Obviously, she holds a win over her. The other reason it makes sense is that Nyla has been in the top 5 for a long time. I think since she lost the title, she's actually never dropped out of the top 5 once. So, look, for me, once this has sort of done, and, she's been hovering around the title for a while, her name keeps getting brought up in, these sorts of conversations, because she has been in the top 5 for quite some time. She'll go in and she'll fight her. Britt will win, obviously. And then I'd like just to see Nyla, maybe drop out of the top 5 for a while, go do something else. Just give, some of the other girls a bit of a chance. She can be a really good heel monster. And, like that moment where Ty got that victory over her, she can be used like that for a while, because she still has that. She is a former champion. She is still dominant. She is still very, very much, very hard to beat. So she's still considered top tier, but, it's time to let some of the other girls come up and, get in these sorts of situations. In terms of them giving a bit more, time to everyone, I was very worried. I'll tell you, I was very worried at the end of the match that they weren't going to have Britt on TV, because that's what they normally were doing with Sheeta, but they gave Britt a promo, which is fantastic. She needs to be on every episode, especially if you're going to build the division around her. So, I just don't want any excuses anymore. Let's do this. Let's keep building this division. They have a lot of really good talent in there at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's time to, bring some of that talent onto Dynamite and, do what they've done for Layla. Show everyone what these girls can do, because they can all go. And if, you watch Dark or Elevation, you see that week to week that these girls are getting a lot better very quickly, and it's really good to see. Mm-hmm. In a year's time, we're going to have an amazingly talented division. They're obviously already very talented, and I'm actually quite looking forward. I think that we're going to get a Ty Conte versus Thunder Rosa #1 contender match sometime soon, and because those two are very much. If you have a look there. they're sort of gunning for that number one contender position. They're number one and number two at the moment, but they keep swapping because, one will fight on Elevation, one will fight on Dark. So keeping them two up together is going to be really great, for that sort of a match, having that number one contender. I'm really excited for that. So, yeah, look, lots of positives in this division. Let's get through this. Even though it's not the most, entertaining thing, it makes sense because, like I said, at the end of the day, she does hold a victory over her. She is the only person to have beaten Britt this year. So Britt needs to get that win back, especially as champion. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I think Nyla Rose is an example of what I was talking about earlier with Cesar Bononi. Because AEW doesn't do this monster heel trope very much, the few in AEW that do, they, just by virtue of their size and strength, become very imposing. And so I believe that's a big reason why Nyla is allowed to not have a lot of offense in the match and still win and still look the way she does. Just because, just by virtue of who she is and how she looks, you get put over even by losing, by having a lot of that offense. So it's happened, as you said, most famously to Ty Conti. But, it happened to Sheeta as well, Baker, Hirsch now. So, yeah, I agree. Put Nyla in a position where she can start elevating people to the level of being ready to fight Britt Baker, and then Britt Baker will be the one that eventually elevates them into telling us who are going to be our main event level women for the next, for the foreseeable future. And that's how you build a division. So I like the way that AEW is doing that. Finally, we arrive at our main event. This was my personal match.
Hang on, okay. You're forgetting something we haven't talked about yet. We haven't talked about the QT segment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I skipped right over that. I want to mention it. The reason why I skipped over it, because Anthony Ogogo wasn't on TV this week. So I was like, if Ogogo's not on TV, doesn't matter to me. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, that segment, it was kind of there for me. I mean, what the funniest part about it, honestly, was that when Tony Schiavone came out, he said Cody Rhodes will be teaming with a man making his debut on Dynamite, Brock, and then for a second I'm so stupid. Like, for a second I'm like, oh god, they got Brock Lesnar. Like, I don't know, I'm such an idiot. I don't know why I bought into that. Anyway, this is a close second for me. Brock Anderson, obviously, given who his dad is, he can't be bad. I mean, there's no way that he's bad in the ring. Just as long as he does a spine buster like his dad, I'm all for that. But you know what? My mind's open on this one. QT Marshall's a pretty solid promo. I think we figured that out. He knows what he needs to do. Cody's a great promo. We know that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think about this? My mind is open for the tag match. Anthony, what do you think?
I'm done for this. This entire feud needs to be over yesterday for me. First of all, you're not the only one who got that Brock thing. They did it deliberately, and everyone. It happened to everyone. So, don't feel bad. They got everyone with that one, especially with the current landscape of AEW where anyone can show up. And him not being with WWE, very, very much. They did it it was very, very well done. With that, now also really funny is that after that happened, the Google Analytics shows that Brock Anderson was the most searched thing on Google for like half an hour after the announcement. Even more searched than things like Roman Reigns, WWE, John Moxley. He out-trended all of them.
Wow.
He was So
I guess they did the right thing.
They did the right thing. So yeah, that was very interesting to look at on the Google Trends. But if you've had I don't know if you've seen the picture, but a few people have been sharing the picture of him versus his dad side by side, and they look very much alike.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Bit annoyed that he didn't get to talk. Especially, this was his big, coming out thing, and he didn't get to say anything. But like I said, look, Cody, this entire feud has been, and, I've been very critical in regards to this feud not making sense. So we've gone down from the national stuff right back to that whole Cody versus QT thing. We're getting the tag match, but, for me, why is Cody bringing in, someone else to join in this feud? Like it's I'm all for it. Let's see what Brock can do. It's going to be very interesting to see how good he is. I'm hoping he's obviously good, but yeah, look, I'm ready for this feud to be over. I'm hoping that it will finish very soon. But yeah, nothing major to say. Just, I wanted to make the point that, it's kind of over. I'm just done with this feud.
Ryan, on your appearances on the podcast, you've been slightly less critical than Anthony about this feud, but I know that this also isn't really your cup of tea. So did this announcement of a tag match here, the announcement that we're going to get to see Brock Anderson's debut, did this do anything for you to raise your interest level in this feud?
No, because we weren't given a good reason to get behind Brock Anderson besides the fact that his father is the Arn Anderson. And to talk about your point about how, I forgot whether it was you or Anthony, but someone mentioned that considering who his father is, he can't be all that bad. I get that, but I also know that David Flair exists. So
okay, fair.
I can't.
That's a fair point.
I can't totally agree with that. We'll just have to see. Yeah, I'm totally tuned out of this feud, and they're not giving me personally good reasons to hold on and want to see how this plays out, because how does Brock Anderson really elevate the storyline and continue it? It just feels like they're adding people for the hell of it. So I don't know. I'm not all that excited to. I'm not even really excited to see him wrestle, honestly, which sucks because who knows? He could be an awesome wrestler, but who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
That's definitely fair. I think what this comes off as to me is AEW is still using Cody to introduce new people, put over new people, and kind of set the level for everyone else, because that's what Cody's been really from the beginning. He has been someone who is in charge, first of all, of a lot of the celebrity involvement that we've seen has been involved around Cody, a little bit around Chris Jericho, but Cody was the one who introduced Shaq. He was the one who was in that match. That feud introduced Jade Cargill and Red Velvet. And that's just an example. Cody was the one who introduced MJF to this big audience and set the level for MJF, that he's a permanent fixture in that upper to main event level. And so that has been Cody's job from the beginning, which is fine. And so they're still trying to do that. They're trying to introduce Brock Anderson right now and place him on a level, and they're using Cody Rhodes to do that, which is fine, because the last time he did it, we got Jade Cargill and Red Velvet, both of whom I think are fantastic wrestlers, and I really want to see them going forward. So Cody was involved in that, fine. We got Anthony Ogogo that same way, fine, that's great. So they're still trying to do that with Cody, which works. However, the fact that they're involving Cody and now Brock Anderson and everyone else that we've seen involved in this particular story, it does feel really disjointed the way that they've done it, and the fact that they went from betrayal storyline to national pride storyline to now back to this weird betrayal storyline thing. Individually, each of these stories works for me, but when you put them together, jam them end to end the way AEW's done, that's where it kind of loses me, because you're asking me to shift my focus back and forth between all these different stories that they're doing. So I see what their idea is, and I am actually excited to see Brock Anderson wrestle, if only because I'm a big fan of his father. The Spine Buster is probably my favorite move of all time, and his particular Spine Buster is my favorite move of all time. So I'm kind of a mark for Arn Anderson, so maybe that's why I'm more excited than your average person. Either way, again, my mind is open, because at the end of the day, even though this storyline has been very up and down to say the least, we've still gotten some pretty solid matches out of this. And I did like the bull rope match with Camarado and Dustin, and Ryan and I talked about that on last week's podcast. I did like Cody's match with Ogogo, so this has given me some matches that I do enjoy. So it's just a matter of, how are they going to present this story in a way that that will be consumable for people that maybe have tuned out of this whole thing. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Now we can get on with our main event, which was my actual match of the night. I really, really enjoyed this. Hangman Page, I've said before, his character that he is now developed into is the character I've always wanted to see from him, and it's been really, really good storytelling to get him to this point. The story between Brian Cage and Team Taz, I think, is great. Brian Cage is just a freak. I mean, it's like it's almost unreal to see what Brian Cage can do. And just in the middle of the match, he just busts out a casual 619. Like, and it's like the commentators just had no idea what was going on. They were absolutely floored by this. I loved that. Cage is phenomenal. Powerhouse Hobbs is great. Preston Vance is great. I loved everyone in this match. I really liked the match. It really worked for me. Anthony, this is your main event. This is what's supposed to sell you on tickets for next week. Eventually, it's going to sell us on tickets for the tour that's going to happen in less than a month now. We'll get to that in a second. So taking that into account, there's more expectations on you if you are the main event. Did these four guys fulfill those expectations for you?
Yeah, it was a really good match. I've just noticed that the stats I'm looking at have a bit of an error on them. So it says that the finishes that the Brian Cage and that did 22 finishes. I don't even remember that. So
no, that's not an error. The 619 counts for 19 finishers. I talked to Craig.
Okay. Good to know. So I'll ignore that part. But yeah, look, it was a good match. The match was more about Team Taz, and this is more of a, I'm all in for Ricky Starks versus a newly babyface Brian Cage. We'll probably see more of his lucha stuff. He a bit more, less, less, I guess, physical stuff, more, jumping around doing all the, acrobatic stuff. So,
right.
You'll get a bit more of a different style from him now that he's going to go face. So, it's breaking up, leading to different storylines. 10 getting that big moment where he gets the win, them celebrating on stage at the end, is all's good, all fine. Gives them the win as well. You can keep 10 strong. So, because Hangman's, obviously we've talked about Hangman potentially going for the title. He's going to need some people to, back him up to go against, obviously, the Elite. Whether that's going to be, the people who are currently going for the Elite, or whether that's going to be the Dark Order, time will tell. But obviously keeping 10 nice and strong is really good. Yeah, look, nothing outstanding. Obviously a good match. Yeah, look, just looking at the strikes and everything. There's the strike downs a bit one-sided. Actually, a little bit surprising with 13 strike downs versus 5. And look, I think Will Hobbs just continues to impress me. As well. Talk about, doing spine busters and that. 10 and this is I guess my main issue. Like, if you're pushing Brock Anderson as, the inheritor of the spine buster, you've got both 10 and Hobbs who both do it, and they both do it very, very well. Hopefully he's got a little bit more than just a single spine buster, because if you're comparing it to their two spine busters, you're going to have a hard time.
That's fair. I will say two things. They haven't necessarily said that he's inheriting the spine buster. That's just me talking because of who his dad is. And also, this is just in my opinion, the more spine busters, the better. I love that move. If everyone in AEW does a spine buster, I'll be happy. But that's just me. There's move overload for everyone else. I'm a total mark for that. Ryan, this I think was a good match in terms of the storytelling, because again, it kind of mirrors the opening tag match where you had two concurrent stories. You have the story of this match that you can see. If you take a look at the graph, you can see how much this match varies in terms of the two teams and how Hangman and 10, come back into this match and how they do it and what they're able to do, how they're finally able to overcome the overwhelming strength and power of Cage and Hobbs. So there you have that story, but then of course you end up with the exact same story that we had at Double or Nothing, where Ricky Starks throws in the championship for Cage to use. He declines, and this time Cage just leaves the ring entirely, which is not something AEW does very much. I can't remember the last time they had a tag partner actually leave a match in the middle and create a 2-on-1 scenario. I'm sure it's happened in the history of AEW. I just can't think of when it has. And so, again, like we say with just about everything, as long as you don't overdo it, story beats like that really work. And in this case, it really did work for me. And they still got to put Hobbs over because he still was fighting against these two guys. And eventually he needed both guys to be in the ring at the same time, basically doing something illegal in order to finally beat him, which I think is great, and obviously putting over the buckshot lariat as well. So this match, I thought, mirrored the opener in terms of concurrent stories being told. Did this work for you on that storytelling level?
I think so. I was kind of confused about the fact that they had Adam Page and 10 team up, because I honestly thought they dropped the whole Adam Page Dark Order storyline. So that kind of caught me off guard at all, because I enjoyed interactions with the Dark Order, but there were just so many things where I thought, for whatever reason, they dropped it. Adam Page is moving on, whatever. But clearly, they're not fully continuing on with that. And this match, once again, is a good way to extend the Team Taz storyline. As I was talking for the first match, how that was kind of like one segment, and now we're continuing on with the next segment. But here, we at least have interactions with basically all the members of Team Taz, right? Brian Cage and Powerhouse Hobbs obviously fighting in the match, but Hook and Ricky Starks are also there. So I think, I thought that overall the match was a fun affair. I've never been high on 10. Out of all the members of Dark Order, I always felt like he was the most lackluster, but even he put in a pretty awesome performance. The only thing about this feud that confuses me, and I've mentioned this a few times, I don't understand how they're going to make Brian Cage a believable good guy. It's not about his wrestling style. I could totally see him pulling out the lucha type moves, and from that end of things, I could definitely see him being a pretty great good guy. But like in terms of character and personality, he doesn't feel like he would be all that great of a good guy. I look forward to see how they end up proving me wrong, I guess. I want to be proven wrong whenever I feel like AEW is doing things a little differently than I would have liked. Same with like the whole Britt Baker thing. I want to be proven wrong, and I want her to do as good as possible, and I want her to prove me wrong. But anyways, back to this match. I definitely appreciated this as a pretty great hoss fight. I think them dropping bombs, overall, it was fine. Nothing too crazy, I would say. It was a good match. I don't think there's anything else for me to really say, because I actually, here, one thing I will say. One thing I was surprised about was the fact that in terms of big offense, Adam Page and 10 got 10 instances of big offense, but Brian Cage and Powerhouse Hobbs got 0. And that doesn't seem right. I don't think it's an error on Craig's part, but I was just surprised to see that, to see how powerful, I guess, Adam Page and 10 were in this scenario. I don't think they should have been that powerful. I think it should have been just a little bit more evened out, but overall, I think that's kind of a nitpick. Yeah, that's why I think about that. It's interesting to see where they're going to go. Out of all the other storylines, this one with Team Taz is the one I'm most interested in, regardless of whether the results are appealing or not. I think the journey is still going to be pretty great.
Yeah, that's fair. What I really liked about this match is, much like the Miro match, it was basics done right, but it was basics in terms of the way that these guys were to go out there and fight. And so Cage and Hobbs were supposed to go out there and look like just absolute meat houses, and that's exactly what they did. And Hangman and Ten are like they're like the step down from that. They're not quite as big. They still pack a lot of punch for what they are, but they're not quite as big, so they have to fight back in that sense. Ten is actually, in contrast to you, Ten's been the guy from Dark Order that actually I've most connected with, that I've really liked, and I really like his match style. I like his look. So I'm excited to see what he can do, and obviously anyone who's listened to the podcast before knows my thoughts on Hangman, the way that his character has grown on me from when it really lost me in the middle of the pandemic era to now moving out of it. Now it's really growing on me again, and he's starting to become as over with me as he was when AEW first started. So that's why I really like this match. I will say for Brian Cage, I definitely feel you on, wondering how he's going to end up being a babyface. Everything about him in terms of look, in terms of what we've seen from him promo-wise, does say heel. But I think what the story that we could very easily see from AEW is I feel like Cage is being boxed in right now by Team Taz. Like, we see these instances of all this crazy stuff he can do, and all these, the lucha stuff and the dives and the high flying, and we see these little instances of what he can do, but I almost get the sense that Taz is telling him not to, and he has said it on commentary before, where he's like, that stuff's dangerous, we don't want to do that, because he doesn't put over, Taz doesn't always put over how athletic Brian Cage is, he puts over how strong he is and how big he is, and it's like, yeah, but he has all this other dynamic to his game as well, so I could easily see him being a babyface. And it's fueled by him saying, look, I came here with this desire to do this and to be this kind of wrestler, and you didn't let me do it, and you tried to control what I was trying to do. And so, from that, in that sense, it would actually really work with me. Whether he can promo as a babyface or not, that we'll have to see going forward. And anyone who's watched Cage for a long time, he's a better promo as a heel for sure. So we'll have to see what he's able to do, or if he's just going to be someone who plays off the heels that he's asked to work with, in which case that's totally fine. Because right now, if the heel is Taz, in terms of promo game, you're not really going to get much better than that. So in that sense, I'm fine with that, and maybe that will give Cage a little bit of time to figure out his promo style for when he does end up working with new opponents when this whole feud boils over, assuming that Cage will still be the babyface afterwards. Speaking of which, this is a story that I think, given the fact that this is the main event angle, we're going to see this really kick into high gear. I suspect that we are going to see an official Brian Cage babyface turn in the very near future. Which is lucky because we have a whole lot of stuff going on in the very near future for AEW, and this is how I want to. This is what I want the final topic here to be on today's podcast. This is something that Anthony in particular was really excited to talk about. We have the official return of fans, return of touring coming, starting on July 7th, and we have a month of just craziness. We got Road Rager on July 7th. Fighter Fest on July 14th and July 21st, and then Fight for the Fallen on July 28th. I cannot wait for this tour to start. AEW fans are just chomping at the bit to see this team. We've seen it now in Daly's Place. Those fans get loud. Imagine fans that haven't been able to see AEW in person for, at this point, almost 2 years. In the case of Texas and North Carolina, where they haven't been since... I believe 2019, if I'm correct in that one. And so I can't wait to hear these fans. I think it's going to be rowdy. I think AEW, what we've seen is that everyone they want to be baby faces are getting cheered by the Daily's Place crowd, which at this point I assume is that's just people, cheering or booing the way that they're going to. And so baby faces are getting cheered, heels are getting booed. I guess your exception would be Britt Baker and Miro, but even then, there's heels can be over and still be heels. Anyway, I'm really excited for this. Anthony, you were really excited to talk about this tour as it begins because we're seeing some big-time stories start to emerge. So when it comes to the next month of touring, that we have some big events going forward, I don't know if you want to kind of fantasy book this out or how you want to deal with this, but just tell me what you're most looking forward to with this month of big shows coming up.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Jungle Boy can actually do against Omega. Obviously, we actually skipped their little promo during the review there. So,
that's true. That's true.
But yeah, look, it was actually a really good promo. Don't really need to say much about it, but yeah, look, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. This is going to elevate Jungle Boy to a whole new level. Him and Christian hanging out away from Jurassic Express is good because I think Jungle Boy can learn a lot off of Christian. So that will be very interesting to see how that works after he loses to Kenny and if he continues that relationship with Christian to, maybe, fight by his side for a while. That will be very interesting. Yeah, look, I'm hoping that a number of these ongoing storylines are ended by the end of the month. The QT Marshall, the factory and Nightmare Factory and Factory storyline, I'm hoping that is ended. I'm hoping that the maybe get the inner circle feud and Pinnacle feud done by the end of it, getting those couple things done so we come out of it, fresh and with whole bunch of new storylines. That'd be nice. Obviously, I'm excited that we're probably going to have a few really crazy big events for these ones. So yeah, look, I can't even begin to really fantasy book because we know that they will be putting on as really big shows for these ones. So yeah, look, I don't even know where to start with the fantasy booking. I'm just, to be honest, like I said, I'm more hoping that some of those storylines that are not hitting just get ended. One way or the other, they're all over by the end of the month. We can then move on to other things, and it's going to be a very exciting time for fans, especially with the fans coming back and everything. I feel really bad because we're still miles away down in Australia from being able to do that sort of stuff, but you
can live
really
vicariously while watching Dynamite.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So that Double or Nothing crowd was so insane. So yeah, look, I'm looking forward to seeing fans back at TV again, and yeah, looking forward to a great, what should be a fantastic month of wrestling, and that's my hope. Just a whole great month of wrestling, and what more can we want really as fans?
Absolutely. When it comes to kind of fantasy booking this one out, like you said, it's hard to even know where to begin. But Ryan, I will ask you this as more of a general question. What we've seen from AEW when they name their Dynamites like this, usually they're pretty big shows, and we've seen big debuts happen. We've seen, obviously, of course, most famously, Winter is Coming with Sting debuting. That's your most famous, but AEW did 2 nights of Fyter Fest, and I believe is that where we saw FTR versus the Young Bucks? I think it happened on one of those nights, if I'm remembering correctly. And we've seen Fight for the Fallen be a Dynamite special as well. Road Rager is new, but these tend to be really big shows, and now they're happening back to back to back to back. So you're getting 4 named shows in a row. How should AEW approach this to make each one feel big, but also have enough to be able to show on each one that makes it feel like a bigger deal than just your normal Dynamite?
That's a hard one, because the way I'm thinking about it, since we have so much happening at the same time, I hope that AEW is able to do this appropriately while this is a weird situation, because to me, AEW, after their big events, whether they're pay-per-views or whether they're Dynamites with special themes or whatever, the episode of Dynamite after is typically lackluster. To me, anyways. It never, like, really picks up speed. And maybe that could just be because AEW produces, at their best, produces such excellent events. But especially their post-pay-per-view events feel like they're not necessarily slacking off, but almost as if, well, we proved ourselves, so we're going to give you whatever and then pick up again next week, right? Mm-hmm. With 4 big events like this, 4 episodes of Dynamite coming up like that, I'm afraid that they're going to throw everything at the fans at once, and it's just going to be pretty lame. Not lame. I guess pretty lackluster for the month after, just because they threw so much at us at once and didn't spread it out. That's my number one fear. In terms of how to make each event distinct, I think it could just be a matter of aesthetics, honestly. I don't know how else they could really do it unless they were able to match the big matches with whatever themes they're presenting, which I don't know how they would do, honestly. So it's a weird situation. I obviously hope them the best. I think they'll definitely kill it for these big events. I guess I hope these big events, like Anthony was alluding to, these big events over the next month or two are really what ends a pretty big majority of the lingering storylines and really vamps up this new era of AEW that's been referenced. Really start preparing for Rampage, really invest in the newer talent, I suppose, and really prepare for the transition to TBS, I suppose. I don't have a good answer for that question, honestly. It's a lot to unpack.
What is so interesting about this is I'm just curious what their actual plan is, you know what I mean? Because they have a lot of stuff that they're doing before that I feel like you could easily push into this run of shows, you know? So the fact that Kenny Omega versus Jungle Boy is happening on Dynamite on a Saturday in Daly's place is like, couldn't you just push that back 2 weeks and have it happen at Road Rager? You know, I mean, wouldn't that be a natural main event for that first show touring? You know, put the world title on the line. Like, I'm just at the, you know, we talk about this every week. AEW has earned my trust. So instead of saying what a terrible mistake this is, I'm saying what do they have planned? And what there has to be a reason why Kenny versus Jungle Boy is happening on a Saturday Dynamite and not at one of these. There must be a plan. I can't imagine that the world title won't be on the line in one of these 4 shows. And so I'm just wondering what exactly that plan is going to be. Do they have debuts set up? Do they have, I mean, the total optimist in me and some would say foolhardy would say, you know, maybe there's a potential world championship contender that's debuting at Road Rager. And so, you know, are they going to have a fight at Fight for the Fallen? You know, that would be the ultimate optimist view of it, to say that they got someone big. They have a Daniel Bryan or a Samoa Joe or someone like that. That would be the ultimate optimist. So I'm just excited to see what exactly their plans are, because I'm excited specifically because I don't know what they're going to do with this, you know? And so I do agree with you that it almost feels like they have to be very careful, because if they do blow their wad during this whole month, what does the month of August look like? Especially because that's when Rampage is coming. And so you got to put something on Rampage, and we know the first show is going to be big because they want people to watch it. So what are you going to put there? So it just feels like there's so much stuff happening all at once. And so it's a kind of glass half empty, half full kind of thing. If you're a glass half empty kind of person, then you look at this and you say, this is too much. There's no way they're going to be able to fill all this. And so we're just going to get disappointment and it's not going to be very good. The glass half full would say, look at how much stuff is going on. This is just going to be essentially 2 months of just a constant pro wrestling party, essentially, with fans and these new locations and new aesthetics and all this kind of stuff. It's just going to be this insane 2 months of wrestling. So wherever you happen to stand on that philosophical question, that will probably dictate how you feel about the next coming months. All I would say is wherever you stand, just keep your mind open. I hope that AEW has earned your trust to the extent that you would say, I'm willing to see what they're going to do with all this. So for my final question, as we finally get into more solid fantasy booking, instead of trying to book everything and trying to speculate, I will just open the question up to Anthony first. If there was one title that was going to change hands during this run of live Dynamites from Road Rager through Fight for the Fallen, if one title had to change hands, what would it be and who would be the new champion? Anthony first.
The only one that makes sense at the moment is the tag title. Like I said, Miro is still very strong. It'd probably be maybe a little bit too soon, although maybe Fight for the Fallen might be about time, but I see him still going through then. Kenny's definitely not dropping it anytime but soon. You've just given Britt the title, so no way that she's losing that. So the only ones that have really held their title for long, and we know that, you know, AEW particularly likes giving people a bit of a long run, would be the tag. In regards to who they give it to, I'd like... Look, my dream all out match was Bucks versus FTR versus Proud and Powerful in a three-way ladder match for the tag titles. Oh, wow. Chuck that on, you know, Fight for the Fallen as the main event, maybe. Good way to, you know, for the Bucks to lose, you know, good way to put all three, because, you know, obviously that would mix some storylines, obviously with, you know, Proud and Powerful and FTR, you know, Pinnacle, Inner Circle, and Elite. You know, it would mix all three storylines. I think it would be, obviously the talent in the match is just top tier, and, you know, I love a good tag team ladder match. You know, it would be good because you've obviously got Christian and Matt Hardy there, so, you know, they could probably give some tips on how to do a good three-way ladder match.
What would they know about that? I don't really...
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, yeah, look, if any title was going to change, it'd be the tag, and I'd give it to Proud and Powerful. You know, they've done their time. You know, they definitely deserve a title. I know a lot of people are, you know, very high on them at the moment. Although I wouldn't be sad to see FTR get a second reign either, but I think Proud and Powerful getting it in that match would be a good shout, giving it to, you know, a babyface team for a while. Would be, and then, you know, we can have Proud and Powerful defend it for a while. But yeah, I'm not sure if any titles are gonna, because this was why I was actually gonna bring this up. You know, I don't know if any titles are actually gonna change, so it's gonna be a very weird 4 events with no title changes. You expect, you know, maybe one to change, but yeah, look, all the main titles. Maybe, actually, you know what? Scratch all of that. Fyter Fest Night 1, debut of trio titles.
Ooh. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and we were talking about trios titles, and he brought up, because I said, you know, Dynamite is already so packed. There's so much stuff that happens on these shows. I don't know if I want to see another title, even though I believe AEW would do a great job, because as we established earlier, in terms of the modern 6-man tag match, I don't think anyone does it better than AEW. But he said, well, you got Rampage, so there's your extra hour to put some stuff. I'm like, you know what? Put that trios title, like, that is kind of, I don't want that to be necessarily Rampage exclusive per se, but if that's going to be a big thing that happens on Rampage, that you get a lot of those stories for the trios titles and stuff, Hell yeah, that would I'm down for that. So if you want to do that on Fyter Fest, sign me up. The more trios matches I can see from AEW in the style of what we saw with Death Triangle and Kingston versus the Elite, the better, in my opinion. So, excuse me, that's a great shout from you, and I would be down with seeing tag titles change as well.
So Road Rager, this is my new fantasy booking.
All right, go for it.
Road Rager, the trio titles is announced. Fyter Fest night 1 and night 2, you have some trio tournaments. So you'll get 3 or 4 trio teams fighting in those matches there. Fight for the Fallen is your trios title final.
Wow. Yeah. Give me that. I will take that. I'll let Ryan have the last word on this. So I'll do mine real fast. My total pie in the sky, never gonna happen, but it's AEW and it's 2021, so anything could happen kind of booking, is Road Rager. We announce a mini tournament for a world title match at Fight for the Fallen. And so you get the first 2 matches on, or the first, let me do this, 8-man tournament. So it would be the first 4 matches on Fyter Fest Night 1, then you get the semifinals on Fyter Fest Night 2, and you get the finals on Fight for the Fallen to open the show, and then the main event is the world title match. In that tournament, Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe debut. They fight in the finals of that tournament. I don't care which one wins. Doesn't matter to me. Whoever wins beats Kenny Omega for the title. Never going to happen, but it's 2021 in AEW, so it could maybe happen. There's a universe where that does happen. My realistic one, what I actually would potentially want to see in the realm of actual realism is, I'm sorry, I missed something. Scratch all that, what I said about the tournament. Anthony Ogogo actually comes in as third man, beats Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe. He beats Kenny Omega for the title. That's my real never going to happen. Anyway.
Man.
What I actually would be down with seeing is a rematch for Kenny and Jungle Boy for the world title, and the world title be the one to change hands during this. I don't really care which show it happens on. Maybe Fight for the Fallen would be the logical one. It doesn't really matter. And do that title change with Jungle Boy being the champion. This is one where if you as AEW wanted to do a short title reign, if you kind of wanted to break up, the I don't want to say monotony because they work, but in terms of all of the long title reigns that we've seen, we have yet to see a really short title reign. I think the only one you could say would be Brody Lee as the TNT champion, but we certainly haven't seen one in either of the world titles. And we're coming off of a 1-year reign over on the women's side, and on the men's side, we've seen 3 champions in its entire history. And we're talking about going on 3 years at this point, we've seen 3 champions. So I would like to see them do a short title reign just to break that up. And Jungle Boy, to me, would be the one to do it with. He is mega over right now. And I believe at Road Rager, when you hear an entire arena of people singing along with his theme song and chanting with him and being so invested in his matches, I think you'll see. I mean, this guy is one of the most over wrestlers in the company right now. Put the title on him, get that massive pop, that feel-good moment, and then immediately you can get some heel heat on Kenny by having him take that title back at All Out, and you can get however much heel heat you want. You can do a stip match if you want. It doesn't matter to me how he gets it back, but he can take that title back from Jungle Boy at that time. You've tantalized the fans with Jungle Boy as world champion. He knows what it feels like to be world champion because presumably he's going to get a much longer title reign in his future. So it'll be very similar to the way that New Japan actually books their new champions. They give them short title reigns so that they know what it feels like to be world champ. They know the pressure. They know what it's going to entail. And then later on is when they get their long ones. They did it with Okada. They did it with Omega. They did it with Tanahashi. So in my opinion, if you're AEW, do it with Jungle Boy and do it at some point during this so you can introduce to everyone, you're damn right, fans are back. And that is your fans are back moment, Jungle Boy winning the world title. So that's my one fantasy booking, and Ryan, will end with you. What title could change, what title should change during this run of 4 special Dynamites, and who will be new champion?
Okay, so I agree with Anthony about Proud and Powerful winning the tag belts. Whether you want to do it in a ladder match or not, up to you. I think that would be awesome, especially considering that AEW has had 3 ladder matches, and considering who's been involved in them, all of them should have been excellent, but only one of them really was. So this could be AEW's chance to bring back the ladder match and have it done right, I guess. I would not have Kenny Omega lose the championship until All Out. I would personally rather have Adam Page win when the time comes, and
that's definitely fair.
Jungle Boy lose in the whenever they're fighting soon. I totally understand your reasoning, Griff. I think that I was actually going to mention the Okada thing to actually explain why it shouldn't happen. So I think if they pulled an Okada with Jungle Boy, it would almost blow him up too soon. So in Okada's case, he won the belt in 2012, but I don't think he really solidified himself as the ace of New Japan until 2016. I don't think AEW fans are going to be that patient to, because, yeah, I don't know. If Jungle Boy were to win the belt in the next coming months, then lose, I'm not sure that he would be able to sustain that popularity for how many ever months or years until they give him the belt back. So I think they should build him up a bit more before giving him the belt. And if you want to hear more, sometime soon, there's going to be a new roundtable published where a bunch of us talk about who we want our next 5 AEW world champions to be. So look out for that. Don't know when that's going to be released, but it's going to be released. So I have more thoughts about that on there. I don't want the women's belt to change hands, so Britt Baker will be champion in my book for a little while. One thing that I think could be really, really, really fun is a title change for the FTW title. And here's how I would do it.
Thinking outside the box with this one. I like it.
Yes. This whole Team Taz feud has been making me go a little bit crazy because I've been trying to overanalyze it to try and figure out how to introduce Hook into the fold in a more intensive manner, I guess you could say. What is his debut match going to be? How is that going to work? I think him winning the FTW championship could be awesome. Because at this point, it's almost a guarantee that Brian Cage is going to end up breaking off from Team Taz, whether he decides to break off before they turn on him or whether they turn on him before he decides to break off. I don't care. Either way, Brian Cage is still going to be FTW champion, and Taz is going to be pissed because that's his title,
Right.
What better way to get the belt off of him than have Hook step up to the plate in his debut match and win? We already know that Hook is going to be a boss, so why not show it from the get-go? Have him win the title. I mean, it would be different if he were to go after any of the other singles belts, but because this is... I'm not sure that the FTW belt is, canon in this case, but him winning a belt in any scenario would solidify him right from the start, So that's what I would fantasy book. Hook winning the championship from Brian Cage, him solidifying himself as a boss that everyone already knows he is, and having his wrestling career really start like that.
That would be interesting because I don't think AEW has ever done the win a title your first night in the company trope yet. Right. Now that I'm thinking about it. And so this would be the way to kind of soft do that. Because like you said, the FTW title has questionable canonicity in terms of how much of a title it actually is. But it's recognized by Taz. And
it's only been defended 3 times, and each of those matches haven't been all that great. The first one was against Will Hobbs. The most recent one was against Brandon Cutler. I forgot what the middle one was. But regardless, it all happened on episodes of Dark, I believe, if I got my information right. So it's not even like the title has way too much merit. Really, the big accomplishment would be Hook defeating Brian Cage. If there's shenanigans, that's totally fine, honestly. I wouldn't mind that. As long as Hook still looks powerful and ends up on top, whatever. I'm good with whatever they do.
That it's a good point. If you were gonna do a title match that had a bunch of schmas and a bunch of stuff like that, the FTW title would kind of be the one to do that in, because it would, at this point, anything like that kind of would cheapen the world title a little bit, based on how it's been booked. But seeing kind of something crazy like that for the FTW title would be interesting. And so you're really wanting a hot shot for Hook here. So I can respect that.
Look, if you're going to be the Anthony Ogogo guy, I'm going to be the Hook guy, okay?
All right, you know what? That's definitely fair. Anthony, you don't get a guy because you're a heel. So you don't get your guy. You got to find someone. So for any of you listening, if you agree specifically with one of ours, if you're liking one of our ideas, or if you just want to tell me how much of an idiot I am for mine, if you're watching on YouTube, obviously go down into the comments. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever it is, then just tweet either at PW Musings or tweet one of us at the accounts that we are about to tell you. We'll start with Ryan. Where can the people find you?
My Twitter bio is going to be in the description. I'm continuing writing for Pro Wrestling Musings in the roundtables. I have an article about the second Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega match coming out on Tuesday. I don't know when this is actually going to be released on all platforms, but an article's coming out. And I plan on continuing on with the podcast, so I'll be here another time.
Hell yeah. Anthony, where can the people find you?
Twitter, Anthony Down Under is my username. Come and say hello. Also do writing for PW Musings, obviously. Working on a article. Well, I've actually got 3 articles at the moment, which is also always a bother. But look, I'm hoping to have something out in the next week or 2. We'll see what happens. It's always very busy, but come say hello. Always happy to talk wrestling or anything else.
You should feel lucky that I'm giving you the chance to plug your own stuff here. You are the heel. I shouldn't even be giving you that opportunity, but I am magnanimous, so this is what we're doing. So you've now heard it. Tweet one of these guys if you really liked their ideas. Let's face it, you didn't like mine, so you probably won't tweet me anyway. But you can go find me on my personal YouTube channel over at General Admission Wrestling. While you're there, if you're not already, go subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel, where we got all kinds of cool stuff, power rankings. We'll have a video accompanying the Kenny Omega Kazuchika Okada series that we have going up, which Ryan is going to be a part of. That is happening all next week, and we'll have a video accompanying that as well. So there's all kinds of cool stuff happening around Pro Wrestling Musings as always. So go subscribe if you're not already. And of course, this podcast comes out weekly, and you know that we're going to have so much to talk about with the insanity that Dynamite is going to be over the next 2 months. We just spent a whole lot of time talking about it. So thank you so much for joining us here. We'll see you next time on the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. We really appreciate it.